For more, I'm delighted to say we're joined by the editor of Football España, Ruairidh Barlow. Great to see you as always, Rory. I mean, the Barca president, Joan Laporta, told us here on World Sport just a week or so ago the importance of the US market for them as a club. He said, we are open to a game in the United States. But what's your take on it? Is it being pushed this by the league or is it the clubs?
Yeah, it's great to be on again. I think the big obstacle for this has been removed over recent years. We'll come on to that, but this has been in the air for about 7 years now. Back in 2018, this was first suggested as an idea. I think the league itself are very keen to kind of expand their market in the US and try and get a jump on the Premier League in that sense, competing in a purely kind of product form. And I think the clubs, from their point of view, it's very much, well, does this add up? Do the sums add up for us? And they seem to think that they're going to make a profit of it. So I think, yeah, for both the clubs and the league, this is seen as a logical next step for them in the expansion of the league.
We know there have been exhibition games, there's been pre-season tours in the United States. This, though, an actual league match, has been talked about a couple of times previously, but hasn't made it over the line. So, I mean, how realistic, what chance there is going to be a different outcome now? Because we're talking about a game in December, only months away, when the season kicks off this weekend.
Yeah, the key thing that's kind of been removed here is Luis Rubiales, who's the former RFEF president, former Spanish Football Federation head honcho, who was something of a sworn enemy of La Liga president Javier Tebas. They were determined to disagree on almost anything. And I think Rubiales, if you were to go to him and say, does he oppose the idea of games being played abroad? Well, the Spanish Super Cup takes place in Saudi Arabia. So it's not a kind of a competition thing. It's not something based on kind of a fundamental disagreement. But now that Rubiales is no longer there, there's a better relationship between La Liga and the RFEF, and that approval from the RFEF has now come, and it's now down to UEFA and FIFA to give the green light to this, and it's hard to see them opposing it when FIFA themselves have run a competition in the US very successfully in their eyes.
But the fans, where we so often these days talk about the voice of the fans, the supporters, who is this game for? They're obviously not happy. Barcelona, Villarreal, it's a big fixture. It's heading into that winter break period where there's not going to be the games being played. They don't want it to happen, the Spanish fans. How strong a voice do you think they have? Will their opposition be listened to?
They do have some sort of lobbying power, but ultimately I think this is going to be an effort in vain. And I think even the fans that are opposed to this generally in Spain have met this with a sort of resignation that they see this coming down the road and they think it's going to happen whether they like it or not. Two things you'll see in common with this game is that Barcelona are kind of always been the team that have been mooted for this. They've been the team that have been involved. And in Girona, who were the first, another team that both of these sides have fan bases and very passionate fan bases, but they're not the biggest and they're not going to kick up as much of a fuss as, say, an Atletico Madrid or an athletic club might if one of their games were removed from their home ground. So I think that's kind of the key part of this key thing here. But also I think, yeah, the Spanish fans, they kind of are coming to terms with the fact that they don't really have much of a say in it anymore.
Yeah, Barcelona, of course, the Messi link with Inter Miami, the city where this game being talked about, being played. But I mean, talking of the fans and the power that they have, it's Villarreal fans who just in the last week or so have also signed that petition in opposition to the signing of Thomas Partey. I think a group of the fans described it as the darkest day in the club's history, with them making that move to sign him just weeks after he was charged with 5 counts of rape and 1 count of sexual assault here in England. The move has gone through regardless. He's made his debut. What kind of reception did Partey get?
Yeah, there was a few whistles and a few boos, but it has to be said this was a pre-season friendly that wasn't particularly well attended, so it's kind of difficult to tell just how much of a reaction he will get kind of once the competitive football gets underway. And to cycle back to another unpopular transfer in what was Mason Greenwood when he signed for Getafe, it was kind of disconcerting the lack of almost coverage that this received in Spain. There wasn't it has been covered as to what's happened, but it's not necessarily been met with such kind of a passionate reaction in the media at the very least. Where it was more virulent was in the stands, where you saw Greenwood travel to away games, and he was often had some quite offensive chants shouted at him during those away games. So I think that's more of a test of where we'll see where people's minds are at. But it's so difficult to tell these days on social media how much of a percentage of these Villarreal fans are opposed to it, and how much are kind of waiting to see if he's innocent until proven guilty, as Villarreal have put out in their statement.
Yeah, of course, Thomas Partey released on bail, but does face those charges. But as you said, that was a pre-season game. The competitive action kicks off on Friday, doesn't it? Barca beginning the defence of their La Liga title against Mallorca on Saturday. I mean, what's your take on where we stand? Xabi Alonso now in charge at Real Madrid, but I mean, are the favourites Barca once again for the title, do you think?
I think a lot of people do have Barcelona as kind of favourites for this. For me, Real Madrid are slightly ahead of them in terms of where I see them, but I do think it will be tight. I think both these teams will actually improve on where they were last season, especially in terms of the points totals that they'll put up. Barcelona, from their point of view, they've strengthened in terms of depth up front with Marcus Rashford. Joan Garcia, 25 million. He's the big signing from their rivals, Espanyol, in goal. He is a big upgrade for me, and I think he'll make a difference for Barcelona. But there are a couple of question marks in my mind, at the very least. One of them is the departure of Inigo Martinez, who was lionised by Hansi Flick, no other, during the season last year. And also Lamine Yamal, when he kind of said his goodbye message to Martinez, who's gone to Saudi Arabia on a free, a key part of their defence last season. He said, goodbye to my captain. And that kind of shows the importance that he had for Barcelona last season. But coming on to kind of this campaign as well, I think if you keep your ear to kind of what people have been saying in Barcelona, what players have been saying, especially the Champions League, that's the one they want. That's the one that they're focused on next season. That's the one they believe they can win. So I think, does that hunger come into it? Barcelona were ferocious last season, hunting people down and feasting on kind of defences. Does that hunger carry through every week in La Liga as it did last season?
Yeah, of course, coming off the back of that domestic treble of trophies. But a long time since they last got their hands on that Champions League crown, isn't it, Rory? For now, thanks very much, as always.